to the computer. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Claire Lochner, and I'm a senior lecturer in criminology at the University of Melbourne and a member of the Border Criminologies Network. As we begin, we know, of course, how closely connected border policing is to internal policing of Aboriginal peoples in this country. These practices are not disconnected, and it's therefore unsurprising that Australia, as a settler colony, has some of the most punitive border regimes in the world. The Australian government, moreover, does not hold the lawful authority to welcome who comes into this country and who doesn't. This is held by First Nations people in this country, whose elders past, present and emerging I wish to acknowledge here today. I speak from the lands of the Yorta Yorta people today, whose lands, like all others of Aboriginal peoples in this country, have never been ceded. The conversation today with Behrouz Boochani forms part of a series of responses, analyses and reflections by members of the Australian and New Zealand Society of Criminology, Border Criminology's thematic panel, and that's a long title. This is on the ruling announced on November 8th this year by the High Court of Australia in NZYQ versus Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs, that indefinite immigration detention is unlawful. We know that indefinite detention of refugees has been a long-standing policy of the Australian government since the 2004 decision in Alcatab versus Goodwin, in which the High Court of Authority held, even while the detention of the applicant, a stateless Palestinian man, had no country to return to and no foreseeable end date, that his detention was still lawful, even though he did not know when he might be released. In that decision, it was determined that that detention was not punitive in nature and hence constituted the lawful exercise of executive power. The decision stated that whether a person's young or old, dangerous or harmless, likely or unlikely to abscond, whether someone's been in detention recently or for years, that the consideration that might bear upon whether that detention was reasonable or lawful were not applicable. That decision effectively resulted in the detention indefinitely of thousands of people, including children. And we know that the indefinite nature of detention is one of its most concerning features. There's been incontrovertible, consistent evidence over 20 years that prolonged indefinite detention has an adverse impact on a person's mental and physical health. The Australian Human Rights Commission said that as of mid this year, there were over 1,000 people in immigration detention and 124 of them been there for more than 5 years. Many have been there for longer, up to 10 years and more. Detention functions like a prison, but without the procedural protections that a criminal justice system might deliver. We have yet to hear on the full reasoning of the court, but today I'm pleased to have with us Behrouz Boochani. Behrouz Boochani is a Kurdish-Iranian writer, journalist, scholar, cultural advocate and filmmaker who's produced award-winning publications and creative works, including those documenting the violence of immigration detention prisons, as they're more aptly named. Boochani was imprisoned in Papua New Guinea under Australia under its offshore processing inverted commas policies for 6 years. He holds a number of honorary positions in universities in Australia, including at the University of Melbourne. His book, No Friend But the Mountains, Writing From Manus Prison, won numerous awards, including the 2019 Victorian Prize for Literature. And Boochani has recently published an edited collection of his articles in Freedom, Only Freedom, edited by Omid Tofighian and Mansoubi. Behrouz, thanks so much for joining us here today, and I'd love to hear a few of your responses on this decision.
Thank you.
It said that it's not punishment, but can you tell us something about what you think about indefinite detention as similar to prison, but also worse than prison?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think, when we think about prison, so legally we see that prison is a place that the prisoners already been through a process. So if they committed a crime or they just accused, they go through a court system. So they is like a process. They investigate and then they make decision and then put that person in prison. And it's clear how long that person stay in prison. A year, 2 years, 3 years, they know that. But in this system, actually, there is two big difference. First, that the detainees in Australia detention system, detainees didn't committed a crime, and they just innocent, so they just seek asylum. That is what they did, and then they didn't put people through a system, a court system. So I mean, minister make decision, they put that person in the indefinite detention. So that is a big difference. That's why the refugees who are detained always they ask this question: what is my crime? And that is a kind of torture. It's deeply people feel that they are tortured because they are aware they didn't commit a crime. So they always say, what is my crime? Why am I here? Why did they put me in this prison? That is a big difference between like a normal prison that we know and Australian detention system. Another thing which is really important is that detainees in Australia detention system don't know how long they stay in that prison. So always they are waiting. And that is a deep torture because they don't know how long they stay. And it's very difficult because refugees, you know, in my case, we were waiting for more than 6 years. And that was bit by bit. We were there, we were thinking that in 2 months we will be free. Then we said another 2 months, another 3 months, another 4 months, just like that, bit by bit for more than 6 years. But definitely, if we would know that we will stay there for 6 years, that was a different story. So I think that is the big difference. That's why I say that Australian detention system is a prison, but worse than a prison. But of course, they call it. They say in different words. You know, they say that it is a detention, or in some places in Manus Island, they said it is a processing center. So that is what they say. But the actual life, the system is a prison and worse than a normal prison.
Yeah, it's interesting too that there is no certainty on when people will be released. It doesn't, at least the criminal
I'm
justice.
sorry. Yeah, I should add something as well. So there is another layer here. For those refugees who they managed to Manusan and Nauru, not in onshore in Australia. I'm talking about refugees who experience that system in Manus and Nauru. So there is another layer for that, which is banishment. So refugees are banished. We were banished in Manus Island, and that is another layer of this. And when you feel and you are aware that you are banished, the exile, the banishment itself is a torture, is humiliation, a deep humiliation, and it's in some ways is dehumanization as well, because you feel as a refugee that why did they banish me? So why they didn't banish me? You feel that you are a rubbish, and they just kick you out of Australia and ban. So that is another layer of this, which is really important that, but of course there are many layers, but in terms of prison, I think is really important, this layer, which is banishment as well. So that is an extra punishment.
Yeah, it's almost as if the government has decided, where can we put people that's as far away from where they might get support. And Manus Island is many, many hundreds of kilometres even from Port Moresby. So it's a long way. It's an island off an island. So this kind of banishment you talk about is absolutely right. And it's a way of punishing people again. But the punishment is also, I mean, these places look like prisons and feel like prisons, but without all those other protections or knowing when you're going to get out. Or
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So in that case, in Manus and Nauru, you are out of law as well. Because when you want to access to a court system or like that, you are banished under national security. So that's why you are there, you are banished on based of like a law or policy, but in the same time you are out of law because you cannot have access, a proper access to the this court system in Australia, because they said, oh, you are in a different land, you are not in Australia. So that is another layer of it.
what and part of that, part of the decision, what we're hearing by the politicians in Australia on both major parties, is that the people who are going to be released are all criminals, they're all bad, or they're all, so there's also this kind of criminalizing narrative. But there might be some people who have committed criminal offences, but they should go through the proper processes of criminal law or not. And then there are others who might have breached these character codes of conduct that the government has. Even things like just self-harming is said to be a breach of the character code. So what do you think of these kind of criminalizing narratives? The headlines saying refugees are all criminals and they should be locked up, and that kind of framing.
So I think that is really important. So when we look at the history of what I call it exile policy, or history of the detention industry in Australia. So if we go back, we reached to 2001 when they in Australia they call it Tampa ship. And that time when Tampa ship came, and Australia didn't let the refugees get into the Australia, that was the beginning of actually this exile policy, that they banish people to Manus Island and Nauru. But when we go back, we reach to 1996, on that time when the John Howard, that later, he became a prime minister, he started to talk about refugees and criminalize refugees. So the words, the language that now in Australia is normal, like the word boat people, the word illegal refugees, and we know that refugees are not illegal. Doesn't matter how you reach to the country. So these words, and later they added some other words. So this process of dehumanization already has a history in Australia, and also the first happened in the language. So first happened in the language, then later we see the result that they put refugees in detention. And so this process of dehumanization has a long history in Australia. And definitely when we go to the first time that I think they established a detention system was on 1992, on that time, or one, I'm not sure. So that was the first time they did it. But this system has developed itself and has become day by day, year by year, has become like an industry. But actually, the language is important. So a part of this is criminalize refugees, criminalize the language, criminalize the narrative, you know. So in this case, the recent case that we see in Australia, so of course, when we look at people, like just normal people in the society, of course, they don't go and read, all of them read the whole story, and they don't try to understand it, because it is a legal language, already is a complicated language, already is a difficult language. So, but what we've seen in recent case, the title of the stories, the title of reports, the way that we see the title is about some people who are dangerous. They committed crime and they shouldn't be released in the society. But of course, they don't talk about it. How many people are like this? And they don't talk about it that there are thousands and thousands of refugees who've been in the community. They've been working, they've been living, and you know, so they don't talk. It's just cases about just some people, and even they don't talk about the crime that they committed. So there are different kind of people. Of course, some few people committed a serious crime, but most of them, it's not a huge crime. It's like a, you know. So I mean, the way that they use the language, the way that the media he used the language and follow the politicians, is definitely is criminalize the narrative, and also dehumanize refugees, you know. So they reduce refugees to just some criminals. So that is the problem, because you know, refugees already are marginalized in the society. Refugees already been politicized, and it's very easy for politicians to, while they have an argument or discussion or debate in the media or in the public about this particular case in the court, they just criminalize the narrative. It's very easy, and they did it. They did it, and unfortunately, the media have been quite passive. They just, the media have become like a, has become like a machine to just produce these words that used by politicians. So that is the huge problem, and this case is really important to, you know, actually analyze, and we look at it.
I think in some cases the media has actually been worse than passive. I think it's actually put headlines out that have been really dangerous. Some of the headlines I've seen have been very kind of dangerous headlines that assume that everyone in this situation is a really threatening criminal, which is not the case at all. There's a few examples, but there's not. But assuming that everybody is like that. So what do you think? I mean, we thought first we get this decision, we think that's great news, and then the government steps in and passes a law that means that anyone who is released under this decision will be subject to curfew, will have to wear ankle bracelets, like monitoring devices, will be policed wherever they go. What do you think of these laws that now are really restrictive and another form of policing, another form of punishment?
Definitely. I think that is the prison continues out of the prison, continues in the society. So that, so these people are in prison. So I mean that the prison still continues. So when we look at this case, of course, it is an extra punishment. And you know, if we compare it to a normal Australian citizen, so when a normal Australian citizen commit a crime, they send them to court, then they put them in the jail for 4 years, for example, 5 years. And when they finish that, they are just free. But in refugees, they do the same, but when they finish, they put them in detention. So now they should release them, but they don't want to release them. So still they are prisoner, and that is an extra punishment. That is really deep torture when you are living in the society as a free person, but all the time, each moment, you feel that you are under control. You are under watch. That is deeply actually painful for people. And I experienced that in the detention in Manus Island, how the camera was everywhere and the guards were everywhere. So we were under watch all the time. So we didn't feel like freedom even inside the prison for a moment. And that is a system of control, you know. But in this case is worse than that, because you are carrying the prison with yourself. The prison is there and you are all the time under watch, under control. So I don't know how long they want to do that.
Yes,
I haven't read it, the news, the details. So when the refugees go out and they put them like electronic thing or something to just control them, so that restriction, how long it takes, again, is indefinite. I don't know the details. Yeah, I'm just asking question.
Yeah, look, I don't either, but that's a really important point, because if that's indefinite, then you have another form of indefinite punishment replacing another form of indefinite punishment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it just comes in a new form. It's a bit like
Yeah.
when Manus closed and Lorengau, and then still Lorengau was subject to surveillance and being
so
monitored.
that means the refugees who committed the crime, they will get punishment forever. Yeah, that yeah, and it's really you know, that killing people slowly.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Yeah.
And how can you build a life when
Exactly. Yeah.
Just before we finish, what did you have anything you want to say, Behrouz, on what you think of these two political parties? They've always worked together on this. They're always working.
Yeah.
Labor Party introduced mandatory detention. Liberal Party made it worse. Labor Party's come in and now introduced new laws that are going to make it really difficult for people. There's this kind of, both parties seem to work together, trying to be as harsh as they can.
Yeah, I think that is a pattern in Australia, at least for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, that these politicians, these parties, political parties, the major parties are in competition to send a signal, a message to Australian people that I am tough than another one. So that's is like a competition of cruelty. And these two political parties, they have been working together, they have been supporting each other. And, you know, it's really interesting that they always are united. And in this case, they introduced the bill to the parliament in a very short time. So all of the politicians stay in the parliament until late, until night, to draft the bill and make it happen. So these politicians, these two parties are, you know, in anything, whatever they are, disagree or they fight each other. But in this case, when it comes to the refugees, they are united. They are united, and that is really dangerous. That is really shows that you know, a kind of dictatorship towards refugees. So when we say dictatorship, people say that no, Australia is not a dictatorship. Okay, Australia is not a dictatorship system for its citizens, not for refugees. You know, so of course it is a dictatorship system for refugees. So this dictatorship system damage refugees. So of course Australia is a liberal democracy, we know that. There are some problems with liberal democracy, but that is not our like issue. That for Australian citizens who have access to court, who have you know, who can defend themselves, they have their own basic rights. The basic rights is protected, all of this. But when it comes to refugees, of course, it is a dictatorship system, because two political parties are united and they make decisions for you. So your life is in their hands.
You're both kind of outside the law. You can't access protection of the law, and yet you're pushed down by the law as well.
Exactly.
At the same time. Thanks so much. We'll end there, Behrouz. I know it's not really, there was so much, people were really relieved at this decision, but then to see how the Australian government and the opposition have reacted is really disturbing. And we have to be constantly vigilant about these changes and how the government introduces new laws to avoid those decisions. Thank you so much.
So that means actually these two political parties, when they get united, they are powerful enough to undermine the High Court decision. That's happened with only refugees, not other things.
Yes. Yes, that's there's so much more we could talk on this actually. It's really disturbing, but thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.